Okay, we're back in the kitchen and I'm going to show you how I make a cake mix. I make enough for several cakes and I make it in bulk. Somebody asked me the other day, is there anything you can't make? And I said, well, there's a lot of things, but a cake. I can't make a cake to save my life. So I found this recipe for homemade cake mixes, and it's something that I really like. We like it, and so I'm going to show you what I do. The ingredients are so simple. Sugar, flour, and I will be using half all-purpose flour and half of my whole wheat flour. You know, I've told y'all before that I use our wheat, and I have a little flour mill, and so I make my own whole wheat flour. Flour, sugar, baking powder, yes, remember, I buy in bulk, and salt. So we'll start off with the flour, and it takes 8 cups of flour. I will use half all-purpose and half whole wheat. If you want a white cake, not going to be white because I use the whole wheat flour, but like I said, I can't bake a cake anyway, so what difference does it make what color it is, as long as it tastes good. Okay, I've already put in 4 cups of the all-purpose flour. And here's 4 cups of my whole wheat flour. And now we'll do 6 cups of sugar. And I only use cane sugar, pure cane sugar. I don't use sugar beets, mostly because there's a lot of GMO. This is a 4-cup measuring cup, and I'll get the rest of the sugar in there. Here's the last 2 cups of sugar. And the recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of baking powder. My 1/4 cup measuring cup is dirty, so we're going to do some of that math we talked about the other day. 16 tablespoons in a cup. So how many tablespoons in a 1/4 cup? 4. Anyway, I'm going to measure out. The baking powder. And then it calls for 1½ teaspoons of salt. This is a 1/2 teaspoon, so math again. 1½ teaspoons, using a 1/2 teaspoon measuring thing would be 3 of these. This has got to be just about one of the easiest recipes that I have. And it is so simple. When I said I couldn't even, that I can't bake a cake to save my life, I'm serious. I couldn't even make a box mix. My daughter-in-law taught me a trick to that. On the box mix, always add an extra 2 eggs. So if it calls for 2 eggs on the mix, you use 4. If it calls for 3, you use 5 eggs. Also, use milk, not butter. Oh, milk, not water. And use butter instead of oil or whatever it calls for. And so many of them say beat on low for this many minutes and then on high. And she told me, she said, turn your mixer on and just beat the daylights out of it. Anyway, after I started doing that, my cakes were actually pretty good. I still couldn't decorate them or, you know, any of that, but they tasted a lot better than before, and they didn't always flop. So what I'm doing here is I've just got my whisk and I'm mixing together all the dry ingredients. Then, as you know, I use jars to store in. And when I get this all mixed together, I'll just put it in one of my gallon jars. And I'll be back and show you what I do. I have it all in this gallon jar. And what I do is I write on the outside of the jar how to make the cake mix. And so it is 4 cups of the mix, 1 cup of milk, 2 eggs, a stick of soft butter, and then a teaspoon of whatever flavoring you want. I change it up. We do vanilla and we do almond. Another thing that I've done with these is if I want chocolate cake, I just add cocoa. Or I add whatever kind of cake I would like. And I know you're going to ask, well, how much cocoa do you add? It's a hard question, because what I do is I get it mixed. I add a little bit of cocoa powder into the mix into the dry mix, and let it all mix in, and then quality control. I taste it, and if I want more chocolate, then I add it, and that's basically what I do. Now last summer, I made a cake for my granddaughter, and I said, what kind of cake would you like? And all she said was pink. So I had some frozen strawberries, and I chopped them all up in my food processor and put some in the cake itself. And then I rarely frost a cake because my cakes are that bad, but I did use some of those strawberries in just a basic buttercream icing, and that cake was good. And for those of you that like graham crackers and frosting, very good. Anyway, what I do, and we all know I'm a tightwad, is after I put the butter into the mix, then I take the paper of the butter, and that's how I grease my pan. You don't have to grease and flour. If I don't have butter, then I just, whatever I have, butter or my lard or cooking spray, whatever, and then it goes in a 9x13 pan at 350 degrees for approximately 35 minutes. And y'all know how to test if a cake is done. You put a toothpick in the middle and bring it out, and if it comes out clean, your cake is done. So anyway, this is just another thing I do to save money and know what's in my food. Cake mixes are cheap, and I realize that, but I know what's in this one. Half of the ingredients in a cake mix you can't pronounce. So another one of my cheap things I do, cheap and free. So I'm still going to can something. I thought I might can ribs today. Experiment, because I found them in the bottom of the freezer and they weren't any good. So I wasn't able to do that. I told somebody today I might be canning water. But for today, I just wanted to show you how I do make my own cake mix. And then when you're ready to make a cake, you can literally throw this together in a matter of minutes. All right, talk to y'all later.